Hello there everybody, this is Alex or RCG Blade, and recently, and by recently I mean quite literally last night, I finally finished 100%ing Silent Hill F. I've gotten all the achievements, I have fully upgraded my character, I have achieved all of the endings. I've played through the game about 5 or 6 times now. So I wanted to wait until I had 100%ed everything and I really had a good grasp on the game before I made any kind of a review, but you know, that time is now, so it is time for me to finally share my full thoughts on Silent Hill F. Now, Silent Hill F is Konami's latest entry into the Silent Hill franchise, which is, you know, succeeding the last one, the Silent Hill 2 remake, which, by all accounts, pretty damn good game. A couple of performance issues here and there. It is Unreal Engine 5, and you do get some of those in this new game. You do get some traversal stuttering, and I have heard reports of people really struggling to run the game, but me personally, with an RTX 3060 Ti and a Ryzen 750-700X CPU, I believe, and 32 gigabytes of 3600 megahertz DDR4 RAM, I didn't really struggle. I was able to maintain a near perfect 60. There were a couple of dips that were very short-lived, like they were not game-breaking or anything like that. So while I empathize for those who have experienced those kind of issues, me personally, I can't report on any of them myself personally. Now, a couple of things right off the bat. This is going to be the spoiler-free section. There will be a spoiler section later on. I will have those time codes in the description, so you're not going to get spoiled. I will also do a little reminder before I get into spoilers, so that you're not just accidentally passively listening and all of a sudden you're like, hey, what the hell, that's the end of the game. So just to get all of the biggest main critiques out of the way, first and foremost, do not let people gaslight you into thinking that this game is somehow not a Souls-like or has Souls-like elements. First off, I'm sorry if I offend you, and this is coming from someone who likes the game. I really enjoyed Silent Hill F. It absolutely has several Souls-like elements, and we're not just talking, oh, there's a melee combat element, and oh, you can dodge or dash. It's more than that. You've got the real-time healing. You can't just heal from a menu, you've got to heal in the game. You've got your stamina bar. You've got a separate focus bar that you can use for parries and counterattacks. When you are playing this game on the Lost in the Fog game difficulty, which is, you unlock that after beating the game once. When you're playing it on Lost in the Fog, which you need to for an achievement, the game is legitimately punishing. I am talking Struggle Fest 2025. Like, the final boss that I literally got on my first try, on my first playthrough, on Lost in the Fog, having played through the game already 5 or 6 times, it took me probably 10 plus attempts to beat that final boss. It was a genuine struggle, and the game really requires you to get good at that point. Now, if you're just playing on story difficulty, the combat isn't really an issue. It only really ever becomes somewhat tedious when there's a bunch of people gathering up on you, but that is mostly towards the end of the game when you've got some kind of upgrades to help deal with that. But on hard difficulty and above, the game does become genuinely challenging. Hard mode is challenging, but it's like a fair challenge. And Lost in the Fog is just straight up like, just tough. It's a tough time. It's kind of grueling. I know that by the end of my Lost in the Fog playthrough, I wasn't necessarily enjoying the forced combat encounters. But again, just getting that out of the way, yes, the game absolutely shares Souls-like elements. Like, come on, guys. It's not even an argument. I don't know why people are trying to argue against it. I get trying to defend a franchise that you enjoy. Right? I enjoy this franchise as well. I enjoyed this game, but I'm not going to sit here and lie to people and say, no, this game shares absolutely nothing in common with a Souls-like, when that's just patently false. Again, we mentioned performance. I didn't have any issues. I'm not discounting the issues that people have had. And I will just say, Konami just released last night the first patch for this game. There was not a single performance fix or even a mention of known bugs. Even though there are several. I've been keeping up online and forums, and there are several bugs that people have had. Not just one person, but, you know, a large amount of people. And so Konami does not address that whatsoever, but they rushed this first patch out 9 days. Granted, it's pretty late, but still, the fact that this is their first patch is insane. And all it does is remove the digital deluxe content that was falsely given to some Steam users. They removed the rabbit skin from the game. Like, you still have the digital deluxe art book and the soundtrack, but the fact that Konami's first instinct and Neobard's first instinct was to release a patch that removes content from players who were falsely given the content. They didn't do anything. They bought the game and they just were given an upgrade essentially for free. To then have them remove that content without even promising any kind of bug fixes or acknowledging that there are no bugs is not a good look. So for those of you with performance issues, it seems like unfortunately you might be waiting a while. And if that is something that you're concerned about, if you've got a lower end system, I really would wait until the developers show some sign that they're listening to the community and are actually going to address the bugs. Again, I didn't encounter any bugs. I had one crash throughout my 6 playthroughs, literally one crash. No bugs, no performance issues, so your mileage may vary, but I just want to put that out there for you folks. Now, the game is split up into 2 areas. You've got the Fog Town, and you've got the Dark Shrine, which is this game's equivalent of the Other World. I loved all the stuff in the Fog Town. I loved running around the streets, going through the buildings, going through the elementary school, or not elementary school, the middle school. I enjoyed all of that. The Otherworld stuff in the Dark Shrine, I personally found to be a bit of a drag. Some of the parts were quite literally just huge halls you're forced to run through. There's long cutscenes that you literally cannot skip. The enemy encounters, because in this game, when you're in the Otherworld, the Dark Shrine, you are given these weapons with unlimited durability. They're really throwing enemies at you, and it can be an absolute chore, especially when it's a forced enemy encounter, which I am not a huge fan of unless it's a boss fight. Speaking of boss fights, let's get into those now. So I'm going to show some footage from the very first boss fight, because it's not really a spoiler, it happens pretty early into the game. And this boss fight, I feel like if you struggle against it, you probably won't enjoy the rest of the game. The Sakuku-like entity boss fight, the first one, is honestly so easy compared to the rest. I think that this is a game where some people seem to really struggle with the combat. I don't think that's because the combat is bad, personally. I think that the combat system is quite well done. I think there's some issues with the camera lock-on, but I feel like this is a game that will filter a lot of fans who are so used to being able to shoot that when you have to be, you're forced into melee combat, it's going to really up that tension, because if you can hit them, they can hit you. If I have a shotgun and I'm James Sunderland, I can blast a bobblehead nurse across the room. Or bubblehead. Is it bobblehead or bubblehead? I always forget. I think it's bubblehead. But when you have that range, it is seriously such a game changer that going into Silent Hill F, where you are forced into melee combat, you don't have that range, that safety net of distance. It can really make the encounters grueling. So that's something to, just know ahead of time. This is a very combat heavy game. You can pull a Silent Hill standard and just run away from most of them, but like I said, there are some forced enemy encounters, especially towards the late game, that I myself even found quite tedious, especially on the higher difficulties for action. Now let's talk about the puzzles real quick. I honestly, I want to say I enjoyed the puzzles, and I feel like for the most part I did, but these are honestly some of the most vague puzzles I have seen in any game. They go from being super obvious to, okay, yeah, that required some brain work, to like literally you need to know what different plants that are native to Japan look like. You need to know what the flowers look like, the leaves, you need to know what the leaves look like. It can be tedious if you don't know what a kudzurut is, or if you don't know what like a plum blossom looks like. Like things like this are just kind of things that most people in the West, I feel like, wouldn't really be familiar with. So granted, the game takes place in Japan, I get it, but having to have like real world knowledge, not having everything given to me in the game to solve the puzzle, but actually having to research stuff outside of the game was kind of jarring. On the higher puzzle difficulties, the game is insanely vague with your hints. Those puzzles are tough as hell. And on the lower difficulties, like especially the lowest one, story, the puzzles are so simple, it's not even worth it. I would say that hard is a solid sweet spot, and then if you're feeling up to it, I would say after your first playthrough, try Lost in the Fog to get the achievement. But yeah, I would say hard is definitely my preferred difficulty mode when it comes to the puzzles. Now, just to kind of wrap things up real quick before I head into some spoiler thoughts. Again, I overall enjoyed this game. I didn't have performance issues. I didn't have game-breaking bugs. I didn't really struggle with the combat. I was always, had more than enough items. Actually, you know what? Real quick, let me just talk about the whole faith mechanic and the upgrades. So you can get these persistent upgrades through praying, which you have to offer up an ima, which is this wooden plaque. And you have to have a certain amount of faith, and you can upgrade your omamori slots, which are kind of like perks. You can upgrade your base health, your base sanity, and your base stamina. Now, I didn't use a lot of sanity, but sanity allows you to pull off these things called focus moves, and you can even get slow down time when it's time to parry an attack, which will really help you if you're struggling. I honestly, 4 out of 5 of my playthroughs, I literally did not use this mechanic whatsoever. You can find an omamori later into the game that allows you to take, instead of taking health damage, you take sanity damage first, and then once your sanity is gone, it will start taking your health damage. That was pretty much the most useful way I could find a use for sanity. Sanity as a mechanic is utterly pointless when you are in the Dark Shrine Otherworld, because your weapons have unlimited durability, and you can't really do good charged attacks, in my opinion, at that point. But in the regular world, in the Fog Town, you can get some really good use out of sanity in the focus, especially with some New Game Plus weapons you can get later on. Again, it's to me an optional mechanic at best. If you are feeling like you're overwhelmed trying to keep up with these 3 bars, your health, your stamina, and your sanity, just forget about the sanity. That's what I did. I didn't struggle. But if you are struggling, be sure to use that sanity, because it can really help change the tide of battle. So, as I was saying before I got off into the whole sanity thing, yes, you can get these persistent upgrades. They persist through New Game Plus as well, and they are game changers. The omamoris especially, you need to use your omamoris. You need to get as many slots as you can. They will seriously change so much of the game for you and make it so much more manageable. Whether it's, your dodges cost less stamina, or you take less damage based on how many enemies are around you, or you do more damage to stunned enemies. There's a lot of good stuff you can get in there, and I highly recommend gambling for some nice omamoris as early as possible. Alright, so with all of that said, I would probably give this game, at this point in time, an 8 out of 10. I believe that the story is really, really solid, especially as you get the other endings. Something worth noting is that on a New Game Plus game mode, or not game mode, but a playthrough, there will be new documents, there will be remixed enemy locations, there will be new cutscenes, there will be new dialogues. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that really warrants another playthrough. And I found it rewarding enough just to get the achievements. Something like Silent Hill 2 Remake, I kind of struggled with 100%ing just because of the game's length. But once you get all the upgrades and you know what you're doing, you can easily beat this game in 4 or 5 hours. Not a problem. I've done it 2 or 3 times now. So yeah, 8 out of 10 for me. I would recommend getting this game if you've got a good PC, if you're a fan of the Silent Hill franchise, if you're really into kind of weird occult mythological stories, if you like body horror. The designs for the creatures are pretty good. But yeah, I would personally recommend picking this one up. Maybe watch a couple of other reviews or watch some early gameplay like I've got playing here in the background before you make that decision, because obviously the game's not going to be for everyone. It's pretty divisive. Me personally, I don't think it's quote-unquote woke. I don't have an issue with things being woke, to be clear, but for the people that are trying to claim that, oh, the F stands for feminism, oh, this is blah, blah, blah. I mean, dude, the game takes place in the 1960s period of Japan. Yeah, sexism was around then. It's around now, but it was around way worse back then. It was far more normalized. That is integral to the story. If you can't accept the fact that women have had hard lives at some points, get over yourself, man. That's the game. Deal with it. I think that all of the topics covered are completely valid. I think that it gives you a good insight into that period. It's very clear that the developers did a lot of historical research. And I don't think that the game is trying to shove identity politics down your throat. I think it's just basing the story on real life horrific shit that happened, which helps accentuate and elevate the horror. So if you're someone who complains about wokeness, don't play this game. Do all of us a favor and don't play this game so we don't have to hear you bitch and moan about how, oh, I couldn't play as a man, oh my god, I'm so offended. Get over yourself, seriously. Okay, all that out of the way. I'm not going to get into spoilers, so this is your heads up, this is your warning. Stop listening now if you care about spoilers. I will be discussing all of the endings, all of the playthroughs, all of the weapons, all of the enemies, all the boss fights, even the hidden ones, okay? Spoilers. 3, 2, 1. Okay, if you have beaten this game several times, you have to be in the same camp as me. This game is absolutely a Souls-like. I mean, you look at some of these endgame bosses, and they are literally so far removed from anything you'd see in Silent Hill. You've got big fox demons, you've got big ogre demon god things, you've got crazy shit, right? Like, the game goes pretty hard in the endings, and I actually really liked the boss fights. The true endings boss fight, I loved being able to swap between the two characters, taking on the two bosses. God, that shit was peak. I absolutely loved it. And I found all of the playthroughs very rewarding to play through. I enjoyed finding the new documents. I enjoyed 100%ing the game. I enjoyed being able to use the new weapons that you get, right? Like getting the what is it, the PP801 or whatever, like the lightsaber, getting that after completing the UFO ending. Getting the Sacred Blade, and that being a persistent thing throughout the games. I loved it. The first ending, I know it's pretty controversial. People are like, oh wow, what a fake out. She was just on drugs the whole time, murdering everybody. I mean, that's the first ending, man. Like, I get it. People are like, I should be able to get a different ending on the first playthrough. They don't enjoy the fact that they're locked into that one ending. But it's necessary for the grand arcing narrative of the game. You need to do the persistent playthroughs. You need to have that be your first ending in order for the rest of it to flow and work as well as it does. I was not upset by the ending. I kind of predicted not pretty early on, but maybe like halfway through the game, 2/3 around the game, I was like, oh, okay, so these pills are what's causing me to hallucinate everything, and they're a drug and stuff like that. So it's not like a crazy twist that you don't see coming unless you're not reading all of the documents. And obviously the twist being that Hinako is being sold into an arranged marriage by her father to cover his gambling debts. You can find documents in your first playthrough that reveal that before the end of the game, so that stuff wasn't confusing to me. One thing I haven't seen a lot of people mention is that her sister Junko was also sold into marriage. I don't see anybody bring that up. They always talk about Junko getting married because she wanted to. Granted, she wanted to because she wanted to have success in that period. She was someone who was very results driven, but she was still sold into an arranged marriage. I think that's worth mentioning, folks. My favorite ending is probably the true ending, just because of that boss fight and the idea that there are now two sides of Hinako walking around if you take it very literally. I know that with Silent Hill, there's a lot of debate about what's real and what's not, what's in someone's head, if someone's an unreliable narrator. And yes, well, I find it pretty obvious that the game's meta story is Hinako not knowing whether or not she wants to get married at a young age, feeling like she's forced into it, but also feeling conflicted because she does feel emotions for her husband-to-be. I think that there exists a world in which, yes, the game is about those anxieties, but also the stuff with the gods could possibly be real. I find that stuff to be very interesting narratively, and when we know that gods exist in the Silent Hill universe from the prior games, I don't think it's a leap to think that these Japanese gods and demons and deities exist also. So yes, I do believe that the game is kind of telling this meta story about Hinako's resistance to getting married. And I realize I've been saying her name, I've been pronouncing it like two different ways. I've been saying like Hinako and Hinako. I believe it's Hinako. Sorry, I'm a white Canadian guy. My background is Italian. I'm working with what I got, right? I personally believe that the story is quite well handled. I think that the endings are all really solid. They all complement each other very well. And the natural progression of the story as you achieve the other endings is something I've never experienced in a game before, but I absolutely love. And I hope other games kind of continue doing that sort of thing. So, last little bit I'm going to talk about for spoilers is the controversial furry arm. Yes, Hinako gets a fox arm towards the second half of the game. When I watched the reveal trailers and I saw the hit stop combat, and then when unfortunately I was spoiled about the whole fox arm thing, my first thoughts were, yeah, this is very far removed from a Silent Hill game. This is very, very different. Watching is different than playing though, and my experience playing the game, my experience with the combat has led me to enjoy it. The fox arm, honestly, I mean, your weapons don't have durability in the other world anyway in this game, so the fox arm doesn't bother me. The soul sucking mechanic, whatever. The bestial form where you can kind of, I played on controller, so you press in both of the thumbsticks and then you kind of go berserk and you can't take damage. You take like durability off of your beast form with hits taken. That came in handy enough that it didn't bother me. Again, I understand people complaining that it's so far removed from Silent Hill, but the games are pretty fantastic, right? Like, there's a lot of fantasy stuff going on, a lot of weird mythological stuff going on. I'm not gonna refund the game because there's a fox arm, guys. So yeah, overall, I enjoyed the game. I would recommend it. I think that the controversies are way overblown, but I do think that there is some valid concern in the state of the game with some of the bugs people are having and the developers seemingly prioritizing potential profit over playability for the player base. I think that that's kind of scummy. It breaks my heart because I really love this game and I want to just sing all of its praises, but if the developers are gonna be like that, if the publishers, Konami, are gonna be like that, it requires some nuance discussing the game. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I know this was kind of all over the place. This was not scripted. I quite literally just woke up and did this after having beaten the game the night before. Like, by beaten I mean 100% thing. It took me around 25 hours of in-game playtime to achieve 100%. Not bad at all, not bad at all. It took me less time than it took for me to beat Silent Hill 2 for 100%, so take that as you will. I recommend the game. I think it's damn well worth it. I love the story. I love Hinako. She's up there with Heather or Cheryl Mason, like my favorite pro tags. I found this game to be very similar to Silent Hill 3 in a lot of aspects, which I loved. And it's funny because Silent Hill 3 was also the first Silent Hill game to take place outside of Silent Hill, right? You've got the Otherworld fog sections in a mall that is not in Silent Hill. So it's interesting that another game that takes place out of Silent Hill also features very similar themes about womanhood and maturity, growing up, all that stuff. Anyway, I'm rambling. I'm going way off script even though there's not a script, so I'm just going to end it here. 8 out of 10 game. I would recommend. If your computer struggles with other games, maybe wait for a little bit, watch some reviews. And yeah, that's it. I have been Alex or RCG Blade. Thank you very much for sticking with me this long. And hopefully I can get some more videos out there. So I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.